So what I'm showing you now is something that's so important. It's probably the most important thing that you have to do in math studies, knowing how to use your calculator to solve equations. It's not really an official skill you have to learn. Well, it kind of is. It's related to topic 6, but I think this belongs here too. So I'm going to show you 2 really important tricks to solving equations. I use this so often on paper 1 and paper 2. It's ridiculous. So I mean, it's just, oh my God, it's so important. I like this advance. It looks like square root of the answer. So let's look at what an equation actually means. An equation has this symbol, you know, this equals symbol. What does that really mean? It means that they're the same. That means 2 things are the same when you equate them. So, you know, if you have like x plus 1 equals x squared minus 4, let's just say I'm inventing something, right? It just means that this thing is the same as this. And what do I mean by same? I mean that's going to be where they meet. Maybe I'll make this a nicer S here. So same. It's where they meet. So that's the actual meaning of equals. So equation implies there's an equal sign here. We're equating 2 things. We're making them the same. There's 2 ways to think of this. One is to, you know, you can use algebra if you wanted to manipulate 2 equations, move things around till you eventually get x or y or whatever the letter is. Or you can use something like NSolve. If you use a TI-84 or a TI-Inspire, it's using this thing. The other calculators have something very similar to this. They're just called something related to numerically solving. And I'm going to show you some calculator shortcuts for this. I'm going to show you 2 ways, okay? So you can solve any equation you want, either by doing some numerical way or by actually graphing things. I'm going to show you those 2 different tricks. So you can take the same thing and solve it, you know, many different ways, but I'm going to show you 2 that I like the most. So this is going to be sort of a calculator shortcut. So what I'm going to do is show you this right here. I'm going to show you this. It's called NSolve. This is this function here I'm going to show you. So we're going to use an example here. We're going to use an example of this thing, x squared minus 4x plus 1 equals x plus 4. Basically, solve for x. Now, in case there's no x's, you can make it whatever letters you want. You can put in whatever you want into this little function here. Of course, like I said, you could do it manually by actually manipulating and solving. In this case, it's a quadratic, so it's a little bit more gross. You'd end up probably having to use the quadratic equation, which you can. That's another topic altogether. But in this case, I'm just trying to show you how to essentially cheat. It seems like it's totally cheating, and it kind of is. So I'm going to show you this trick. It's called NSolve or Numerical Solve. And this sort of calculator short form that I'm going to show you is this one right here. Okay, so this is sort of a little short form to tell you sort of how to do it. It's done like this. You start off on a calculator screen. I'll show you this within the TI Inspire at least. So we're going to do the calculator screen. We're going to go to menu, then algebra, and use numerical solve. And the way that it's used, I've put it like this. In other words, here we put in the equation you want, the, you know, blah, 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 blah equals blah, 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 blah. But then you have to tell it comma x. In other words, you have to tell it with respect to x. In other words, solve for x. If there was like y equals 3y squared plus 4y, then put in comma, put in y. You just have to tell it what variable to solve for. So solve, in this case right here, solve for x. In this case right here, since I've got it like this, it'll look really nice. I'm going to end up doing an NSolve. If you look at this thing called numerical solve. I'm going to actually put in exactly this right here. So x squared minus 4x plus 1 equals x plus 4, comma, x. When I do this, I'm just going to magically spit out an answer which is going to be correct. So let's see how I do this. I'm giving you the TI calculator shortcut, but if you think about it, a lot of this stuff is meant to be logical. In other words, if you think I want to solve something, so look within your own calculator. It's really important if you have something other than the TI Inspire, learn how to do it on your calculator, but the ideas behind them all are the same. The actual buttons and the ways to get there is different, but the idea is the same. So in this case right here, if I'm from a calculator, I put that, so that just means I have to start off at a plus page, for example, put calculator. Now I'm in a calculator. Now I want menu, see, so I put in menu, so I do menu. And then I want algebra, can you see that? It's algebra is next, and after that is numerical solve. Boom, all right, that just brought up this NSolve. Now what do I put in? I put in my equation. So I've got x, and I put in the squared button here. It's important to put a right arrow, oops, never mind. sometimes you have to do a right arrow here, minus 4x, so far I'm looking good here, plus 1. Now you actually have the equal sign, look, it's right here, equals x plus 4, so I'll put in x plus 4. Don't forget comma, because you have to tell it solve with respect to x. Put an enter, and you get a magical number. It's just minus 0. And we're going to use 3 significant figures, so minus 0.541. So we'll say that. So minus 0.541. There we go. We're done. That was pretty easy, wasn't it? Now, I want to tell you, numerical solve, though, it gives you one answer. Sometimes, though, there's more than one answer. Then you should have done a polyroot finder. Now, the good news is in math studies, they don't care so much about that. But if you're doing other classes like Math SL or other things like that, then it is actually more important to check. So, in other words, this way, technically, there's another answer, and we've missed it. So this told us one of the answers. This is how you use NSolve. Not bad, huh? Now, let's do it with graphing. So, same example. What I like to do for graphing is we'll actually graph the left side and the right side. We'll actually do those. So again, some calculator short form here, just to give you some calculator tips. We're going to do this. Basically, what we're going to do is actually, and I'll put the little thingy here. This is the really important one right here. So we first got to graph both functions. What do I mean by that? In this case right here, I'm actually going to graph. Here, I'll do them all in a different color. I'll do it in purple maybe. So I'm going to actually graph, some function. Normally they call it f1 of x like this. It might be f2 or 3, it doesn't matter. Basically, graph this equation. Because what this means is that when two things are equal, it's where they meet. So we're going to literally find the intersection of this thing. We're going to find out where these two graphs meet. So we're going to graph this, and we're going to graph this other side. So in other words, if you solve by graphing, just graph the left side, graph the right side as two separate equations. So let's try to do that. So in this case right here, was my little thing, I said, go to a graph. So I need to make a graph page. It doesn't look like a graph. On the TI-84, you have a little button up there to tell you y equals. On this one, you have to do plus page. Well, you can also do it over here, but I prefer this one. So I'm going to add a graph. All right. And I'm going to put in my graph itself. So x squared. So basically, you want to be able to see everything here. So x squared minus 4x. Sounds a little bit annoying, but I'm going to show you what I'm doing here. Enter. And hooray, it gives me that graph. Now I want to do another graph. So you can actually do tab. That's to give you another one, or there's other ways you can do it through the menus, but if you press tab, you get another one. So do x plus 4. Enter. Now if you look really carefully, it turns out there's two different places where they meet, because where they actually intersect is where these two graphs, this red one and this blue one, actually meet. Do you notice they meet here and here? There's technically two places. So that's why I said it was a little bit cheating when I was doing it. It was a little bit wrong in the other NSolve one. But in this case right here, there's two solutions. Let's find this one to the left. Let's see if we get the same answer. So what's often a good idea to do is if you actually want to draw this, it's a good idea to actually tell the examiners, you actually say use GDC, remember that means graphic display calculator, to graph. And basically then you'll get your, oops, I need to see my different graphs, huh? So I need this graph right here, which goes like this. All right, so something like that, and the other one goes something like that. And basically I got the intersections, the places where it meets, that's where the two equations are equal. Where two things are equal means they're the same. So that means where this graph meets that graph. So in this case, we have two places. Now I can ask my calculator for the intersection. And this is how I do it. I do graph, menu, analyze, intersection. Now I don't recommend you memorize these things. Just think it's usually contextual. In other words, from this graph, if I want to find out where they intersect, it's probably under menu. So I go to menu. And then I think I want to analyze the graph. I want to find out where they meet. In this case here, it asks you a lower bound, upper bound. I'll say basically look over here. And it tells you, do you notice? It tells you it's at minus 0.541. So that was the answer. So in this case right here, then I can say the same thing. So x equals minus 0.541. That is the solution that we had before. See, it's the same one. However, there is another solution. So that's why it was actually maybe a little bit better to have done it by graphing here. I mean, you can use whichever one you want. If they only want one answer, or if you know it only has one answer, then use NSolve. It'll give you one answer. If you know it has two answers and they're polynomials like this, you can actually use another one called polyroot finder. So over here, instead of doing numerical solve, there was another one called polyroot finder. If you're not sure about that, watch. I'll do control. I'll go over here to the left. If this one here, if I do menu, algebra, and I do, instead of numerical solve, look, I can do polynomial tools. You can find it there by finding the roots, by moving everything over. You can do that. In any case, let's say I want to do the second of these roots here. Let's see here, can I guess I need to escape here first. There we go. So I'm back to my graph. If I want to find out the second intersection right here, I can actually see it right here. I can again do menu. I want to analyze the graph, and I want to do the intersection. And it asks me lower bound. It just basically wants a guess, so you can sort of put it in. It's at 5.54. So that's the other place where they meet. So fine. The other answer is 5.54. Technically, there's two answers here. So that's how we can solve by graphing.